it takes a lot of courage to wait 10 chapters to introduce your main character. I have to give you kudos for that. Do you have something in mind where that had been done before, an author who had done something that waited that long? Did Dickens ever wait 10 chapters?
Not exactly that I know of, but what I do deliberately make certain as you read those first testimonies, except for one, Gabriel's, all of the characters intersect with Tony at some place in their testimony. So,
it has been introduced.
Yes, so he is introduced.
He just doesn't get his own chapter.
Right, until we get to chapter 10.
So it's his point of view in chapter 10, but we've met him.
Right, we've met him through Mrs. Nguyen's brief encounter at first. We've met him through Pockets. He and Pockets get into quite a bit. And there's sort of a life and death situation they have together. He meets Lena and helps her and then gives her a place to stay. So these characters really introduce the reader to Tony a little piece at a time. And so by the time we get to chapter 10, we get that detailed story, but we already have had a little bit of an appetizer in terms of how Tony has been important to the other characters. Yeah. It goes through, but the pop culture was very important. So there was quite a bit of research. Also in terms of sexuality and sort of trying to get an appreciation of certain kinds of gender experiences, orientation experiences that have been recorded and written about. The book is not in any way trying to be a memoir of a young man who's a transvestite, but it was important to know about those from that community who have shared their experiences and to see how it could be helpful in terms of rendering this young man and knowing him a little bit better. And so that kind of research had to be done as well. So yes, there's quite a bit of time that went in just to getting historical context. But it ties into the 1980s also, as you read in the back of the book, because in the 1980s, I had a family member who was doing some volunteer work in Hollywood, helping with some runaways, and so I was able to get information from that family member. I also, don't tell anyone, I taught high school for 2 years in LA Unified, and I survived. Dave knows what I'm talking about, so does Kate, other high school survivors, teachers. And while teaching on the west side at Uni High, I did come across a young man who was sort of making a journey through transitioning from the penal system back into mainstream, and he had some issues regarding his sexual identity, and I got to know him for maybe 2 months, and some of the things that I heard from him also sort of helped shape what I wanted to do. So I knew I wanted to do that decade because it was one that was still in my mind for a number of things that happened in the novel, but I also had to do something. A few inches as the dress twisted awkwardly around his thighs and waist. His naked lower body exposed beneath the fluorescent lights already filled the vision of those students and adults moving in front of the main office reception area. Tony moved to cover himself, to curl his body into some semblance of a dignified heap. "May God forgive you," Jerry said aloud, storming back out of the door. Those who stood nearby attempted to interpret what was happening. Various students already wallowing, the Wilson sisters drifting loudly with him into Maggie and Jerry's bedroom. He fingered the dozens of dresses and tops that crowded Maggie's closet. His eyes floated over a Prince summer dress, one stowed away towards the rear hanger, its brightness speaking to his mood. He laid the dress on the bed, its colors vibrant against the white comforter covering the queen-size mattress. He searched the row of shoes along the carpeted floor of the closet, looking for the strap-on casuals that he could slip into without permanent injury. He stepped over to Maggie's dresser and touched the items collected on one side of the wide, dark mahogany top. Maggie has always continued to buy the discounted products from her department store, but since she married Jerry, she seldom wore makeup as she did before. Tony pulled the chair over before the dress's large mirror and studied his face for several minutes. He lifted the foundation kit and lightly brushed his cheeks and down to his jawline. He gave careful attention to his eyebrows and eyelashes with eyeliner, eyeshadow. He guided the lipstick, understanding that less was better for his full lips. He turned his head to the side, appreciating the slight Cleopatra turn of the eyeliner at the corner of his eyelid. He wished he could look as pretty as Maggie. He swiveled his head in the opposite direction, making certain that he had applied evenly, smoothly, flawlessly, beautifully. He began singing with the music. His mood elevated. He lifted a pair of earrings set with jade stones, their delicate green color complementing the colors in the dress. He placed one into his ear and marveled at how such a small, dangling connection of gold-covered metal and chiseled stone could make such a marked difference to his appearance. Even without a wig, he liked what he saw, an image closer to the one residing inside, the one that he could articulate with the ritual of makeup. Tony lifted the other earring and turned his head to put it in its place when his eyes fixed on Jerry's face. The intrusion in the mirror was startling, out of place within the illusion of the moment. Jerry's eyes, even across the distance of the room, darkened in disbelief. Jerry's mouth hung wide, a dark cavern, his breath held in check, his rigid body. Tony tilted his head, angling his eyes again to see the fury that possessed Jerry's face. Jerry exploded across the room, grabbing Tony's arm. He yanked him to his feet. "What?" he asked, shaking his head back and forth. "What kind of devil are you?" He raised his fist in a high arc and pounded it into the rouged face before him. After several blows, Jerry stepped back and looked at his bloodied fingers. His balance was lost for a second, and he staggered with the clumsy footing of a child rolling from a merry-go-round. He leaned forward at the waist, his hands finding his thighs to settle himself. In the whispered breaths crossing his lips, he repeated a quick Bible verse, a saving raft to cling to in the unsettling currents of rage. "You will not possess me, Satan," Jerry said as he stood tall. Tony watched this one-man drama and saw her head drifting down again to find hope in sleep. But the voices rose once more, the boat now rustling as many pointed at the fishing boats drawing nearer to their dinghy, until one boat thudded alongside, the yelling and screaming exploding, and she saw the scraggly tied men, like brown skeletons, jumping into the boat, their arms plunged in lava waves across his bloody lips and onto the printed dress, where the designs were dark-stained from the running mascara that scarred Tony's face. Tony couldn't move his muscles, his numb body anchored to the linoleum floor. He heard his own crying, rising, enveloped by the laughter that pressed closer.
Okay, the saying about the teacher projecting. Okay, the sexual. I like that. At least an Amazon one.